Hey friend, it's great to see you again. If this is your first time watching, welcome. I'm Diego and I'm a product manager. Today, I'm going to break down the PM Microsoft interview process, and stay tuned because a lot of people have received an offer from Microsoft after I share with them this process and how to prepare for their interviews. At the end, I'm going to show you how Microsoft structures its roles so that you also know which one you should apply to. I have interviewed with Microsoft 3 times since 2015, and every time I did, I received an offer. But for one reason or another, I only accepted the last one a couple years ago. Also, since I joined the company, I have interviewed PM candidates every few months. In this video, I'm going to share with you what you should prepare for, as well as what happens behind the scenes on the interviewer's side. Regardless of whether you are going for an internship or full-time, the process is very similar. Interviews at Microsoft are divided into 3 parts. An initial call with a recruiter, a call with someone from the team. If you are applying for PM roles, it will be a PM, and a final round that consists of 3 to 5 interviews with members of the team. Your interviews could be all from one discipline or a mix of PMs, engineers, designers, and other functions. This interview can also have what is called the AA, or as appropriate interview. And stay tuned because I'm going to tell you all about this interview later on. The initial call with a recruiter will be a very chill 30-minute phone call conversation where they will want to know more about you, your experience, and your interest in Microsoft and the team. They're going to be the first filter to determine whether or not you can have what the team is looking for in a candidate. But don't worry, this call is actually not as scary as you may think. Other than preparing answers to questions such as tell me about yourself, why Microsoft, and knowing your own experience from your resume, there's really nothing else to be worried about in this call. Be yourself and show your excitement about the opportunity. They might ask you a few behavioral questions like what is your greatest accomplishment, but mostly at this stage is more about getting to know you. This is your opportunity to show that you did a good job researching about the company and how your experience can help the team be successful. The recruiter's job is to help the team understand whether you're a good fit for the role and a good fit for the company. And they also want to make sure that they can answer any questions that you have about Microsoft. Whether you believe it or not, they also want to sell you the company. Recruiters are there to support and advocate for you along the entire process, and their goal is to find a good candidate for the team. After this initial 30-minute phone call, the recruiter is going to work with the team to schedule your first round interviews with them. However, if you apply through your school, you probably won't talk to a recruiter, and your first call is going to be with someone on the team. Also, because you apply through your school, you probably don't know which group you will be interviewing with. So they might also ask you about your interest in the company on your first round. Here's a pro tip for you. Everyone wants Xbox. So have a plan B. What else are you interested in? Once you're inside the company, you can plan moving on to another role, including Xbox. The next step in the interview process is going to be a phone call with someone on the team. For product management, it will be a phone call with a PM. This will be a 30 to 45-minute conversation where they're going to be assessing your product skills, your experience, and whether or not you're a good fit for Microsoft and for the team. It sounds like a lot, but in reality, in the first call, you will get asked questions like, tell me about yourself, why Microsoft? Why do you want to be a PM in case you're not a PM yet? 1 or 2 behavioral questions like tell me about a time that you had a conflict with your team, or tell me about a time that you handled a difficult customer. In the end, most of the time of the interview will probably be spent doing case questions. Most likely a product design question such as tell me about your favorite product and how would you improve it? Or what is your favorite Microsoft product and how would you improve it? Or even something like, how would you design an ATM for somebody who is blind? Your interviewer is going to leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end for you to ask any questions that you have. I personally recommend asking questions about them, their team, the culture at Microsoft, things that you actually care about. Don't try to impress them by asking questions from financial reports or news that don't necessarily have anything to do with the role or the team. After you are done, don't forget to send a thank you note to your interviewer. Behind the scenes, your interviewer has a few days to provide feedback about your interview and make a decision with the team of whether or not you're moving to the next round. Your next and final round can be a virtual video interview or an on-site experience. The final round will consist of 3 to 5 interviews back to back and each consisting of 45 minutes. If you are invited for an on-site interview, one of your interviews can occur during lunch. Having more or less interviews throughout the day does not mean that you are doing better or worse than others. Sometimes the teams interviewing can't actually find enough volunteers to be interviewers, and you may end up with only 3 interviews in your day, while in other cases there might be 5. The bottom line is, don't worry about the number of interviews you have on that day and just do your best. I've seen people who have received an offer after 3 interviews and others after 5. If you're applying through your school for an internship or a full-time position, you will be placed in a group where you and all the other candidates from different schools are going to interview with different teams. Each team at Microsoft at this event will interview a group of 4 or 5 students and make a decision at the end of the day. Your group of interviewers is going to include the hiring manager, and the rest can be a mix of other PMs on the team. This applies to whether you're applying by your own or through your school. It could be engineers, it could be data scientists, it could be designers, or any other role that the team decides to include in the loop of interviews. Your final interviews will center around behavioral and product design or product case questions. In some cases, you may actually get a strategy question, and while it's extremely rare, you can also get technical questions and math questions. Like I said, it is extremely rare, but if the team actually asks you technical questions, they won't be about coding. They will be about system design or concept questions like how does cloud work. But you can imagine that this last one will be only if you are interviewing with the Cloud Azure team. For AI and machine learning, you can also expect technical questions about concepts like differences between supervised and unsupervised learning, precision recall, and other stuff, but not about how the models are built or coded. There is no specific way to know whether your interview will actually include technical questions, and Microsoft doesn't make any distinction in the job posting between PM and technical PM. But your best bet is to read the job description, and if it sounds like the role is very technical, you might get technical questions. And speaking of preparing for your interviews, I know that a lot of people have received a Microsoft offer using my videos to prepare. So make sure to like this video, subscribe, and check this playlist at the end so that you can also get an offer. Alright, so Microsoft is looking for specific key attributes throughout your interviews. The skills that will be tested are customer focus, adaptability and dealing with ambiguity, collaboration and communication, diversity and inclusion, growth mindset, drive for results, influencing without authority, and problem solving. Most of these attributes will be tested through behavioral questions. In fact, finding a few examples of these questions shouldn't take more than a few searches online, since a lot of companies will be testing for similar things. But to get you started, here are a few examples for each skill. Customer focus. You can get asked questions like, tell me about a time when you receive a customer complaint. What do you do? Or tell me about a time you failed to meet the customer need. Adaptability and dealing with ambiguity. Tell me about a time you faced ambiguity in a project. Collaboration and communication. Collaboration is tested in questions like, tell me about a time where you had a conflict with your team. And communication is evaluated throughout your whole interview. Remember to be concise and structured in your answers. Diversity and inclusion. Tell me about a time when you had to help resolve a conflict between 2 colleagues or students. Growth mindset. What has been your greatest achievement? Or tell me about a time when something didn't go the way you wanted at work. Drive for results. Tell me about a time when you have gone above and beyond the minimal requirements of your goal. What were the results? Or tell me about your most difficult challenge you have faced. Influencing without authority. Tell me about a time where you had to influence someone but you didn't have authority over their work. And problem solving. Problem solving will actually be tested by design questions and, in some rare cases, strategy question. They can ask you things like, how would you improve your favorite product? Or how would you design an elevator? While I do recommend preparing for all of these questions, you won't get asked all of them in your interviews. Instead, what's going to happen is your interviewers will choose the ones that are most relevant to the team. They will pick at least 2 each and assess those skills during your interview. However, there's no way for you to know which ones they will pick. For example, one of your interviewers might be assessing you on customer focus and problem solving, while another one may assess collaboration and communication and growth mindset. The interviewers will try to not overlap the skills they are testing for. So prepare for all of them, and definitely prepare for product design questions. Behind the scenes, when your interview is over, each interviewer will have about 15 minutes between each interview to take notes or take a break. However, interviewers don't share feedback about you with the other interviewers between the interviews to avoid biasing each other. Interviewers don't talk to each other about you until all the interviews have been completed. or at least most of them try not to. Once the team is done with your interviews, it's time to call in the as appropriate. While most of the people who interview with Microsoft will end with this one, not everyone will have an as appropriate in their schedule. So if you don't get it in your interviews, don't panic. The team might not have called one for your interview. The as appropriate interviewer is someone with a lot of experience and seniority at Microsoft. It can be a senior manager or a general manager. They've been through years and years of interviews and gone through extensive training to become an as appropriate interviewer. And they could also be from a completely different team. They can be a great decision influencer for the result of your interview, and sometimes they can also be the decision maker. It's up to the team to decide. There is no particular script or set of questions that they will follow, and in fact, I've seen interviews where all they ask is, "What questions do you have for me?" And you will have 30 to 45 minutes to ask questions to them. During this interview, your goal is to show the research that you did about Microsoft and what is exciting to you about the company. Talk about the projects and teams that you're interested in and why. And ask questions to learn more about the culture at Microsoft, the team, their work, and even things they're passionate about. If they ask you questions, it'll probably be about your experience and your projects. They want to see your potential and that you will do a good job at Microsoft. It is unlikely that they're going to ask you product case questions, strategy, or technical questions. Ultimately, they are trying to assess whether you're a good fit for Microsoft and if you share its culture around having a growth mindset and delivery and inclusion. Behind the scenes, once your interview is over, the team gets together again to discuss and decide whether you will receive an offer. Each interviewer will have to add a hire or no hire decision in their feedback. Getting one or two no hires does not throw you out of the process. The team will discuss and reach consensus. Each will expose their case. Finally, the hiring manager and the as appropriate, if you have that interview, will decide the level of the offer. Each team has its own headcount, so it's up to them to decide how many candidates they will hire. And this is the same case for those of you who are interviewing after applying through your university program. Interviewers have a couple of days to add the decision and feedback about your interview on the tool, and once it's done, your recruiter will communicate to you the great news. There is no specific deadline for recruiters to tell you the decision, and in some cases, I know people who know the results a day or two later, and for others, it can take a week or more. There is nothing for you to do in the meantime except for sending your thank you notes to the team and your recruiter. There are very rare instances where you will need an additional interview even after your final round. If this happens, do not panic. Sometimes the team wants a different opinion or one of the interviewers might have something unexpected come up. If this is your case, do not take this as a bad sign. Simply acknowledge that the process is not perfect and that these things happen. Just do your best. After this is over and the decision is made, you are going to receive the news of your offer, and I'm sure that you will have an amazing time at Microsoft. I can't recommend enough working for this awesome company. Now, before we go, let's talk about one more thing. Let me show you how Microsoft structures its roles and levels, because this can help you understand which roles you should apply to and how to use them when you negotiate your offer. At the time of recording this video, Microsoft still calls their product managers program managers. In any other company, the title program manager refers to an actual program manager, but at Microsoft, the title program manager refers to product managers. Microsoft has their PMs as part of the engineering structure, but does not make any distinction in the title or job application between PMs and technical PMs. However, internally, you might be working as a technical PM, and the only way to find out is by reading the job description carefully, talking with the team, and understanding the role and requirements during your interviews. The entry-level PM position at Microsoft is called PM1, and it's the equivalent to an associate product manager. Associate PMs, or PM1s, are typically sourced from undergrads since it's an entry level. However, if you only have a few years of experience, say 1 or 2, you might also be a good fit for this role. PM1s are responsible for one or a few features, and most of their focus is around execution, ensuring that the feature is completed successfully and delivered to the customer. The next level is called PM2, and it's the equivalent to product managers in many other companies. PM2s are usually people with a few years of experience, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in product management. This role is also sourced from master's degree programs like MBAs, but no, you do not need to have an MBA to break into product management. PM2s continue to focus on execution, covering many more features and start to get more into the vision and strategy for the product. The last stage before becoming a manager of product managers is Senior PM, who are responsible for the strategy and vision of Microsoft's product. In some cases, they will continue working on execution, but it's expected that they are the ones driving the vision, roadmap, strategies, and everything else for the product. Senior PMs are typically people with many years of experience in product. Having a master's degree is completely optional and not a requirement to become a senior PM. Microsoft divides each role into bands or numbers. This information won't be available to you in the job posting, but it can be useful at the time you negotiate your offer. This means that within each role there are 2 levels. PM1 starts at 59 and can go all the way to level 60. The next level will be 61 and your title at the time changes to PM2. Each level will affect your total compensation. For example, a PM1 level 59 salary can be around $110,000 in average, and when you get promoted to PM1 level 60, your salary can increase to $120,000 in average. And of course, you get more stock, a bonus, and other things. So every year, in theory, you can get a promotion, but not necessarily have a change in your title. And by the way, if you want to know about tech compensation and how it works, I also just recently released a video on breaking down tech compensation and explaining salary, bonus, stock, and benefits. And now you know, this is the interview process for Microsoft for a PM role. Microsoft is an amazing place to work and I can't recommend it enough. The process is easier knowing how to prepare, and I hope that the tips in this video help you in your interview. Let me know if you have an upcoming interview with them or if you already have one. In the meantime, I'll see you next time.